Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have a very exciting topic today. I say that every time, and I really mean it every time, but I really am excited about today. But first of all, how's it going, Jamie?
Doing okay. Doing really
Good.
good. Happy to be here.
Well, let's get straight to the punchline here. Today's topic is something that touches most, if not all of us. It touches us deeply, and that is loving our bodies, especially during recovery from food related challenges. Today, we might ask ourselves, can I ever learn to truly love my body? And also, we're going to dive into these many layers of body image that women face and the history behind the reasons for our struggles and how we can redefine body love on our own terms. All of this makes me stop and wonder, why has there been such a long history of women not loving their bodies, and why the struggle with all of that?
I have a few thoughts on that. What we know is the struggle with body image has deep roots and extends back many centuries. Women were really seen and valued for our physical appearance, right? That was just what society was sort of built on, and culture was built on, and I think even literature and art and anything that sort of was representative of the culture was built on. So really the whole idea of this sort of relentless pursuit of external standards is a treadmill that women have been put on for a long time, many centuries. Really even again back to the dawn of civilization, because again it's gonna I'm sure we'll touch on this, but it goes back to human beings, the way that our brains are wired to see beauty. We see
Mm-hmm.
beauty and symmetry. So if
Mm-hmm.
women are encouraged to have certain symmetrical and um, evolutionary appearance that is highly desirable, not only for beauty but for procreation. And if women don't have those
Good point.
features, it can really affect us negatively. Um, and it's not necessarily just societal or cultural. It's wired in the brains of all humans. So I think that that's, yes, we certainly have an unfair advantage culturally and societally, but we also have a lot of actual biology and chemistry and um, anatomy that works for us or against us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, we're going to get more into why do women fight this battle. And one reason is that society, as you mentioned, often equates thinness or beauty with worthiness and success. And in our modern culture, perfection often means lean, sculpted, and flawless. When we internalize those ideals, we feel like we're falling short of a goal that we can never actually attain because it just keeps changing on us. And then with ultra processed foods at the center of our diets, recovery often involves major changes in both body and mind. It can be this
Mhm.
vulnerable process, often
Yes.
making us feel even more insecure than about where we, in air quotes, should be. And add on to those facts that we feel we have to look a certain way to be accepted and loved in our tribe. Jamie, when you were growing up, do you feel like there were messages that, during those formative years about, I'm doing air quotes again, good or acceptable body shapes look like?
Oh yeah,
Did
for sure. Yeah, it was very clear. It was made very clear to me in society and family and all of those things. But I was, it was very clear. It was made very clear to me that I didn't meet those standards and have any alignment to those standards. But what about you, Paige?
I feel like I I don't think I was tuned into it that much till I was in middle school and started filling out a little bit, while some of the other girls remained those, straight up stick figures. I had always been like that up until those middle school years when puberty started happening to me, and it was a whole new world for me. I became very self-conscious. I certainly did not appreciate my new curves. I didn't have the language for it at the time, but I knew it put me on the outside of fitting in on some level. And I don't know where that message came from, but somehow instinctively I knew that, air quotes again, that thin was in. And if you wanted to be accepted or in the most popular crowd, there was a big emphasis on what your body looked like, even at that young age.
Mhm.
Oddly, there was nobody that walked up to me and told me these things, so it makes me question, where did I learn that? Where did it come
Mhm.
from? My parents were always very weight conscious, and I'm sure that had to have imprinted on me, just like
Yeah.
it must have done with my children, because they saw me on a diet, constantly talking about my weight, writing down calories. So I do think society has come a long way in this body shaming arena, but I also think the reality is that it does still exist, which is why it's important for us to discuss today. Do you think societal views on women's bodies have shifted over the past few decades? Do you think we're making improvement or?
No, I mean, I don't know about improvement. I think we're more aware of it as women, the double standard and the expectations. Uh,
Mm-hmm,
I don't know that it's really shifted. I think maybe what are the shapes that are acceptable maybe has shifted through the
mm-hmm,
years, right? Like going from the 60s and 70s, the wafy sort of figures that people strove for, went over to curvy and then back to wafy and then back to curvy. So I think that sort of shifts with society. Um, but I think the symmetry hasn't, again, just because of the way our brains are wired, the symmetry has not shifted away, like that it will always be something popular. You might have more or less of a curve to the ideal woman's figure, but that will go with trends. But I think that the overall, symmetry and certain ratios of facial and body features will
mm-hmm,
it's just always going to be there in
mm-hmm.
sort of a standard.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that because it's always been thin, 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 but now the curvy buttocks that, whether you can get implants in the booty or wear your leggings that actually have pads in them to make you look more
That's
shapely. It,
hilarious.
I guess it would help if you fell down, if you had to
I
balance that.
Yeah, or rode a bike a lot. That might be good.
So the question becomes, where do we start to break down what's normal and what's normal? Because there's a little bit of conscientiousness that probably is okay and motivating. So we need to decide, when does it become harmful? And we have to start out by asking ourselves an important question, and that is my relationship with my body motivating or debilitating? I have no problem with a little bit of dissatisfaction, because that can sometimes lead us towards healthy behaviors, like choosing nourishing foods or engaging in joyful movement. But when dissatisfaction becomes chronic, it can spiral into something much more harmful, taking a toll on both our physical and mental health. Normal means looking after yourself, creating habits and routines that support your physical and mental wellness. But then it becomes debilitating when self-care turns into self-criticism, when each, meal or mirror check becomes this source of guilt and stress. Do you agree with that? Do you ever find yourself with your self-care that's kind of slipping into that unhealthy territory? We know we want it a little, but do you have to keep a check on that?
I heard somebody talk about some influencers sometime talk about how she realized she was slipping into her disease of
Mm-hmm.
of food obsession when she would check herself in the mirror too often. Thought that was an interesting observation. I have such a different perspective on this than most people because I just grew up with a very different system of feedback than most women did.
Mm-hmm.
um Almost, no feedback that was anything positive. So for me, I really don't really have much to say on that particular topic. I think for women who uh grew up, you know sort of rotating around or within the paradigm of beauty or attractiveness, I think that definitely would have an impact on inspiring them or motivating them to do what they had to do to make some changes to their body. But I was in a totally different, you know, uh, totally different world, totally different planet.
So right now you think you keep your self-care and balance. It doesn't spin out on you.
No, mm-mm. No. And I have from now at this age of where I am going through some of the health changes that I'm going through, I have a totally different lens. It's not about the way that I look in the mirror. It's about how I'm feeling or how my immune system is responding or what my physical or energetic needs are.
Yeah,
That helps me course correct more than
right.
the
Yeah,
which,
that's so.
is probably a healthier perspective, right? Versus just having the mirror guide.
Oh, totally, totally. You're much more evolved. That you're down. You've evolved down the line in that. And I know I have to be a little careful when it comes to exercise. I can be a little obsessive about getting my workout in every day, and I recognize I get wigged out if something disrupts my routine.
Mhm.
I
I
start
get you.
these scheduling gymnastics of trying to rearrange my day to make sure it all still fits in versus taking a day off. And especially during a hectic time, so I'm actually adding stress to myself to get the workout in. I literally get so stressed out about it. And I'm trying to decide if does that make me obsessive compulsive, or is it okay because I know how much I value my movement and I know that's when I feel my best. So I'm not quite sure which is which. My workouts are a big part of my mental health. I know
Mhm.
that's what keeps me grounded and
Sure.
off of medication. It literally is my medication, and I hate to ever miss out on that. I feel so solid when I'm done, like my feet are firmly planted on the ground. And I just, even for one day, I just really need that to start my day every morning. So it's definitely something for me to keep an eye on. And I'm sure on some subconscious level, I do know that I am aware of there's that underlying knowledge that I also will be getting a little calorie burn in the process. I'm not immune to that thought, but I do make sure to build in gentle movement days too. And I keep it real about not trying to kill myself every day at the
Mhm.
gym. I've learned the hard way that over exercising is not sustainable, especially at my age. I'm 61 now. And, in my younger years, I could, just leave it all on the mat every day. But as I've gotten older, any type
Mhm.
of over exercising really sets me up for injury. And then I'm sidelined for 6 months and then I'm freaking out about that. So it does force me a little bit to be in balance, whether I like it or not. And so I've come a long way with keeping myself in check with that because I could easily go down that rabbit hole. Do
Yeah.
you have any
Yeah.
routines or practices that allow you to stay motivated in a balanced, positive way? You kind of talked about that already, but I didn't know if you had anything set up in place that helps you as an assistant in that area.
Yeah, again spent from I would say my first 10 years in recovery, more than probably 12, 13 years in recovery, thinking that fitness was as important as food. And yes, it was a mental health thing for me. It was, my antidepressant, anti-anxiety
Yeah.
medication, right? Without having to take
Hmm.
anything. And it definitely helped. But what started out as like, hey, I've got this, new lease on life, and I've never really, been active like this before, and I'm taking this, car out for a ride. I'm going to see what it can do, kind of approach to fitness. And it did become within 8 years, it became obsessive. And then
Hmm.
I got to a point where I would just push because I felt like, well, I was making up for lost time of never really being physically fit before. And that what that did was that caused for me to compromise my time. So I would compromise my sleep quality or my sleep time to
Oh.
make sure that I could get my workout done. Right, I would get up at 4:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning every morning during the week to make sure I can get my workout in before I did anything else. And for a while, it was that was a lifeline for me, especially through divorce and everything else. It was a lifeline for me to be able to do that. Um, but it got to a point where I would push so hard that I would not let myself really recover. And it really probably started in my mid 40s where I couldn't push like that every day
Yep.
without rest.
Mhm.
And I noticed that I wasn't as good at taking rest as I needed to be,
Mhm.
or giving myself the grace to rest, especially after I would get sick or after I would get a little bit, uh, let's say, run down. I would, and then again, this is now making sense to me in this phase of my health journey where I've had to take a step back and look at what I'm doing and not doing and prioritize things that promote health. And that includes rest these days.
Mhm.
Back then, I was thinking you just go, 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 go and get everything done until you absolutely can't go anymore and then you rest. And now I'm realizing that I have to take time throughout every day to recharge my batteries. I have to take time every week to listen to my body and recharge. And I have 2 or 3 days a week that are very low key days, gentle walking, gentle movement, yoga, Pilates. It's very, basic and I don't even break a sweat.
Oh,
And I need those days,
right.
right? Because the other days I might be, pushing a little bit harder or lifting a little bit more. But again, this is after a period of 6 months that I really took off, almost 6 months that I took off of anything at my doctor's orders because I
Mhm.
was making myself perpetuating this health issue that I had that had lay dormant for many years, but because of my balls to the wall attitude that I had, it came out and reared its ugly head. So I have to listen now to my energy levels. I don't push when I don't have it. And sometimes I'll start just to see how I feel. And sometimes I have to stop and say, nope, not today. Can't do it. Or I did what I could and I'm
Mhm.
hanging up the shoes. So I've had a shift there. I no longer burn the candle at both ends. And I'm
Mhm.
very careful with how I spend my time and
Yeah.
how I choose to push. And I think I've learned or I'm learning. It's a very painful lesson for me, but I'm finally learning it.
No, I agree. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. You figure it out the hard way. I I was trying to get pajamas on a 4-year-old the other day, and he was fighting me. It's just arm, arm, leg, leg, and I'm like, we can do this the hard way, or we can do this the easy way. And he looked at me dead on and said, "What's the hard way?" You're 4. You are 4 years old. You should not be asking me that question. So anyway, yeah, it's sometimes we do learn best the hard way. But anyway,
That's
all
funny.
this brings to, I know. I was speechless. I didn't have an answer, by the way. He got me.
That's funny.
This all brings to light that our dissatisfaction with our bodies often has roots in a mixture of societal norms and personal experience. For some, it's a passing comment from a friend or a family members. For others, it may be a cultural message reinforced daily through media, social platforms, or even our inner circles. Many of us have felt that pain of being teased or bullied, not just by strangers, but sometimes by those closest to us.
Yes.
This messaging can become internalized, convincing us that we are somehow less than due to our shape or size. And that's the big bad bummer right there. For instance, I had mentioned that when I was in middle school and going through puberty that I developed these curves that I'm like, what? And so once when I went to sit down on the bus, we were taking a field trip somewhere, and there's two other boys on my bench, which, at that point, boys are still very stick thin too. And I remember when I sat down, the two boys were already sitting on the bench, and at that age, three people can easily sit on a bus bench. But one of the boys elbowed the other, and they started laughing at me because when I sat down, my thighs kind of spread out, and they just thought that was really something to make fun of. And I was speechless. I was embarrassed. I wanted to die. I was humiliated. That cut me so deep and left a lasting impression on me. Obviously, it still stings me a little bit to this day, if I'm being honest, when I think back on that experience. I just didn't know I didn't know what to do with my hands. I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do. I just wanted to turn invisible, and it just
Mhm.
hurt me so deeply. There was not a thing I could do about it, and I recognized, okay, I've got a thigh now, and I never had that before. I used to just have
Yeah.
bone and skin. So, anyway, yeah, that stuff like that, that's rough on a kid.
Yeah, it is. Yep. I totally get it. I totally get it. I grew up the victim of bullying from a very young age, so I totally get it. It really messes with
Psyche.
with your head, right?
Yeah.
So I had situations like that every day growing up,
I
at
know.
school,
How do
outside of
you do
school,
how did you do
adults
that? How
and young people like you you just learn to become immune and focus on things that you bring to the table that are valued in other ways. And of course, back then it would have been a very worthwhile pursuit to get, have a spiritual walk, but I didn't have that back then, unfortunately. That would have been very helpful to have. So again, when we think about ultra processed foods, right, can the recovery from those behaviors around ultra processed foods can also bring up deep feelings related to our body image
yeah.
because these foods can alter our physiology and change our weight, right? We're told that it's our fault, right? We're told by the food and diet industries that if we change or look different from the foods that they're poisoning us with, that it's
Mhm.
our fault. Like it's insidious what happens. And again, we take that and we internalize it. We feel like it is our fault and it's our responsibility to meet certain body standards, living in a society, eating the poisonous foods that
Yeah,
are sold to us. I mean,
right.
it's insane what's being done to
Yeah,
us,
yeah,
um,
it's
and what's being
irony.
sort of pushed on us.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So again, it's up to us to look at our bodies in a different light because society and media and culture is not going to do it for us.
Mm-mm. No, I agree. And when it comes to our bodies, I think putting a spotlight on shifting from criticism to appreciation should be this mandatory rite of passage for every young girl. And I
I
only
agree.
say girls because I don't know if you agree with this. I just don't think this is strongly prevalent in males. I don't think they're suffering in the
I agree.
same way.
Oh,
So
yeah, I agree.
yeah, I don't hear boys talking about this topic. So when we look at our bodies solely for appearance, we miss the miraculous things that they do for us every day. If you think about it, well, let me just say that some of our members were talking about one of our Zoom calls today, and where they had this conversation come up about putting the emphasis on just being these wonderful giving people versus what our body looks like, and talking about a mind shift with that. And I thought that that's right. That's if we spent more emphasis on how can we contribute to the world, it might pull us away from the mirror, time in front of the mirror. So if you
Mhm.
think about it, your body digests foods, it turns into energy, it repairs itself, it allows you to move, it allows you to hug loved ones, to experience life pleasures, and even to heal from the challenges of ultra processed food addiction. A powerful shift in body love is moving from a focus on how does my body look to what is my body capable of doing. I have always said what a miracle the body is. I remember a friend of mine going through med school, and they were on the reproductive system at that juncture, and they were saying every baby is like a miracle. If you study the science of it, it almost doesn't make sense. So our bodies are just such miracles. And I feel that way even through recovering from my sugar addiction, how my taste buds can change back to these normal factory settings, and you can lose that drive for sugar within
Sure.
about a week, really more so a month or two, but you can make a lot of progress in a solid week. And we can what I think about is how we can get our bodies to be on our team when we're
Yes.
trying to recover. When we put in the effort, the bodies are willing to step in and go, okay, I'll help, pick me, pick me to be on your team. I
Yeah, I
was
agree.
amazed at how I can stay out of the sugar bowl now, and I don't feel like I'm literally crawling out of my skin when it's around me. I mean, it took a while, but now I don't even, my eyes don't see it the same as, so that's another bonus. I just now thought about that as we were talking about. My eyes literally see it differently. I've come so far, my body, it's just a miracle and does a good job of helping me out. And I do appreciate that. So that's another part of my job is I do notice that my body is on my side and I'm appreciative on for that. Do you have something you're especially proud of that your body has allowed you to do or experience?
Yeah, my body is really, I focus on what it can do, not what it looks like. I focus on how it performs or how it
Yes.
speaks to me or what it gives me. I have a very strong, very strong frame, and I'm able to do a lot more than the average woman can do. So that's very, rewarding for me. I'm able to move houses, and I'm, in the sense of, packing and lifting boxes and unpacking
Yeah,
and, organizing all of those things. I'm able to tackle big house projects and
yeah,
home
you do.
improvement things, and I'm able to, do things that a lot of women just don't have the physical capabilities to do. So I'm very grateful for that. And also I'm able to, listen to my body speaks very loudly to me about what it needs and doesn't need. So I'm able to listen to that, and I'm very grateful that I have that connection with my body. Um, I only wish that I listened to it more in years past instead of just beating it into submission, which I did so many times.
That just comes with maturity, age and I swear, I just think you just kind of like an old dog, you just kind of settle down and get into a groove and see things
Yeah,
differently.
I think this what I'm dealing with has forced me to look at that a lot earlier
Speed
than
up.
most.
Hmm.
But I'm hey, it's here and I'm doing it.
I'm going to give you a compliment in that, yes, physically you're able to do a lot, but you have a very strong mind too. It's amazing the things that you are mentally able to accomplish in a day that your work days are, I know, very busy and you juggle a lot of balls. And that takes a lot of mental strength and energy.
Thank
So
you.
I recognize that in
Thank you.
you for one of your body's gifts. So imagine if you can make a list of things that your body has done for you. If you think about your body that way, things that it allows you to do and enjoy simple things like laughing, dancing, reading, and walking in nature are gifts our body gives us daily. Every time you honor your body's capabilities, you honor yourself, recognizing you are much more than an image. I recently heard a story about someone who is in the middle of running, I think it was a New York marathon, and it was getting towards the end, and they were starting to complain about the difficulty of the task, which would be normal, right, for someone
Yeah.
towards the end of the course. But right at that moment, two men passed this person and they were holding hands because they recognized that one of the men was blind. And right there in front of them, here were these two people who valued they, on some level, they each valued the body that they had, and
Mhm.
they were each focusing on all they could be. And I thought that was such a powerful story of appreciation versus focusing on what we don't have.
I
And it
agree.
just gives me, every time I think about that, it just gives me a lump in my throat, just picturing that humble scene. I don't
Mhm.
know. I know you don't go to the gym anymore, but I I don't know if when you went to the gym, if you ever saw like handicapped people there at the gym working out. I see that at my gym. There's some handicapped people there. And every time I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I don't want to do this. I'll end up walking past one of them and I'm like, what are you even complaining about?
Right. Yep.
Come on,
Yep.
man, get it together.
Very humbling. Very,
Yep.
very humbling. I agree. So let's shift and talk about the steps towards a loving relationship with your body. So where can you start? We know that we always begin with small steps, and remember that true change doesn't happen overnight. It's going to be, one step forward and two steps back. But think about first starting with mindful eating. Reconnect with food in a way that feels nourishing instead of punishing, and choosing foods that make you feel good without focusing on restriction. And again, shifting from sort of the lack or scarcity mindset to a mindset of abundance. Um,
Mhm.
that's absolutely mindset is it's the only thing we have in many cases as we start recovery, right? Because we're feeling like we don't have the same um, ways to connect to others or connect to the world, which is not true, but we're feeling that way. So mindset is
Mhm.
the only thing we have control over.
Yeah. No, if I can add my 2 cents on that one is so big because
Mhm.
whenever people, I'm doing air quotes again, go on a diet, and I'll never go on a diet again, but whenever they start eating clean, even they can feel restricted. But I think shifting from that abstinent to an abundant, you get so many gifts in return. I mean, you get back way more than you
Yes.
ever lose. And is missing out on processed food really something that you feel like is a loss?
Yeah.
So huge, huge, huge. So another one is practicing gentle movement, shifting away from exercise for the calorie burn alone, which is what I was talking about earlier. I have to be careful with, and towards movement that just feels good, like stretching, dancing, or hiking. And like I mentioned earlier, this is very personal to me because that can spin out of control on me from my personal experience. I don't know if it's an exercise addiction or I just know I need to have it mentally, but I I do pay attention to this area, and it's super tempting when trying to control body shape to use exercise as a weight loss tool. I think most women probably fall into that. That can be a temptation for most, but that is literally a train wreck waiting to happen. It's an accident waiting to happen, truly, with the
Yes.
over exercising. It's just not sustainable.
Totally. Accident or injury. Absolutely.
Mhm.
The third is practicing positive self-talk. So counteracting your inner critic with words of appreciation or gratitude. And if you, again, we have to, it's spiritual, it's in the
Mhm.
scripture, it's in the Bible. So it's, comes from the creator of the universe that says, we have to take each of our thoughts captive and examine them and not let them, rule us, that we have to rule our thoughts. And I think that's there's no better reason to do that, or there's no better understanding, I feel like, than the understanding that I am not my thoughts, and I am not going to be, driven by my thoughts. I'm going to make sure that I'm examining each of them and controlling, or at least being aware of them and choosing different ones, right? Controlling is
Mhm.
hard to do, but you can
Right.
be aware and choose different ones. And again, speaking to yourself with self-compassion, um, being your own loving adult self instead of waiting for someone else to do it for you is a big part of, I think, a recovery win.
Yeah. Huge. That controlling your thoughts is just you're unstoppable once you
Mhm.
start doing that. I love your point about that. So this next one I thought was really good, and that's body neutrality practice. So some find it helpful to start with body neutrality, where you focus not on loving or hating your body, but just respecting it for what it is. It's a vessel that carries you through life. And I love that so much because I think
Yes.
this concept is something we can all appreciate. If you are breathing, then your body is working for you. If you're listening to this podcast right now, good things are happening in your life. If you are alive and have potential. So thinking about what you can do to show respect for the miracle that your body is, I think is a beautiful, beautiful framework. And I really love that state of mind. So that's something I've been talking about in some of our Zoom calls too, is just what does respect look like for the bodies that we have?
Yeah, I agree. So as we finish up this discussion, we have the biggest question of all, right? So are we truly ever satisfied, and how do we find what that satisfaction is? And
Mhm.
again, it's I think we have to what I've learned is I have to redefine satisfaction and acceptance. It's if
Good
I go
point.
by society standards, I will it's a losing battle. Not even
Mhm.
society standards, I think media and culture standards, right? It's just a
Mhm.
losing battle. And it's the whole idea of, again, for me, it's been a spiritual process of saying, okay, what does the creator of the universe say about me versus what does man or humanity say or the world say about
Mhm.
me or the way I look? And what I think once you have a shift into a spiritual practice, you begin to see that the ways of the world don't necessarily need to apply.
Mhm. Yeah. So we want to talk, finish up with talking about even being when people reach that ultimate lowest weight, are you ever
Mhm.
even satisfied then? Is that like, okay, well, I've arrived and it's over now and now I'm happy because does the
Doesn't
number on the
exist.
scale?
Does not exist. I'm here to tell you, I've reached those numbers and it was always more, more, more. It does
Interesting.
not exist.
Guess what? My experience was the exact same.
Mhm.
When I was at my lowest, I was still never satisfied and I was thin, very thin. I was either in a panic about if I should lose more just to be safe or was I going to eat that day to keep it off and stay there. And I was panicked about how I
Mhm.
was going to feel if I gained even an ounce tomorrow and the fear of depression at how much it would take to keep my weight where it was and how would I feel if some of it came back. And I mean, the mental chatter was torturous. It just wouldn't stop. I was never left alone. I was in complete obsession with the scale, which is why I do not weigh myself anymore. Now I'm in total freedom from that kind of mental chatter or mental torture. And you know what? It has not made me gain weight by not weighing. Nothing has
Right.
changed. I have shifted to a much kinder approach to health and wellness. And when we shift our goals from how can I love my body at any size to how can I respect and honor my body today, we stop making love conditional.
That's right.
And believe it or not, over time, this respect can turn into true love and learning to love your body, especially while navigating the road to ultra processed food recovery. It's not a quick fix. It's a journey of patience, understanding, and deep compassion. And remember, you're not alone in this. There is support out there for this process, especially at Real Food Recovery. And by honoring our bodies, we're taking steps every day to reclaim them for ourselves. So just take a deep breath, look in the mirror, know that this journey to body love is one of the most empowering gifts you can ever give yourself.
Yes, I agree. So we have some listener questions, and I think they're important ones. The first one I'd like to says listener writes in, I'd like to start by going to the gym, but I'm not sure at the point where I love my body yet and feel embarrassed about how I look. How do I get the courage to not feel so self-conscious? Where can I start? It's very overwhelming. Again, I've been where you are, and I thought that going to the gym was a marker of me sort of being in a place of acceptance with myself, and I think that that's not necessarily true. And I also would ask you if why you think being at the gym is the solution you're looking for, right? What if just getting outside and moving your body, doing something you love is the solution
Mhm.
you're looking for, right? Um, I had this belief that going to the gym was um, the solution to my movement problem. And yes, it gave me so many gifts, but when you're feeling the way you are feeling, it can be a double-edged sword. So just, ask yourself what you're really looking for. And if you're looking for acceptance to look because you're looking a certain way, then I would examine that.
Yeah. That's a good point. Excellent point. Maybe the gym is not the place to start, too.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be now, not that it's not a very empowering place, and I've had amazing experiences in gym communities and, so many fond memories. Um, and that was also linked to when I was in a place that I could perform anything I wanted at the gym. I knew every piece of equipment inside and out, could use them and could use them well, and I was very confident there. So, but when I first started at going to a gym, right, I thought that I had to look a certain way to be accepted, and so
Hmm.
I was striving, and that striving is, I think, coming from a place of scarcity and lack and negativity and punishment. And again, if I could go back and do it differently, um, I might recommend that you just start to move your body and look at what it means to accept yourself where you are. And then if the gym is still calling to you, that's a wonderful thing, but go to the gym from a place of I love myself, so I'm gonna do what I need to do to strengthen my body or improve my flexibility, improve my body's bone density, stamina,
Yeah.
cardiovascular health, cellular health. Like those are the, it's coming from a place of love instead of from a place of lack.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And I will say, I have to laugh because the one thing that I found out, everybody at the gym is actually just looking at themselves.
Yes, also true.
And, and I will also say
Very
that
true.
you do develop nice connections and relationships, and
Yes,
everybody, in my experience, has been very, very supportive and
100%.
encouraging to.
You
So
won't find a more supportive community. I don't, because everyone
I
gets it.
agree.
Everyone
Yeah.
gets it. I agree.
Everyone's there just trying to better themselves. So
That's
yeah.
right.
Another one is I heard you talk about making small changes, but I am not really sure I understand that completely. Can you give me an example of what a small change, what's a small change you made that helped you feel more connected and appreciative of your body? And the biggest thing I ever did personally in my health realm is throw away my scale. I already talked about that a little bit, and that may not be in the small change that is really difficult for some people. I weighed myself twice a day, so I nobody understands the scale more than me. So I it worked for me. I had gotten fed up and I just said, I'm working so hard. There's nothing more I can do than what I'm doing right now. And that was literally my starting point several years ago. And if there's something I'm not happy about with what I'm doing in my daily life, then I address that habit. But the realization that knowing I'm doing all I can do to take care of myself is enough for me. And if that's true, then the number on the scale is truly of little value. That was my first step to probably loving myself, and that made me more accepting of my body. It's been a challenge going through menopause and the changes. There are changes that have come with that that I'm like, but the scale, tossing the scale really helps with that too. So I have to ask myself at the end of the day, have I done everything that I can do? Am I happy with the habits I have? Am I taking care of myself in a respectful, loving way? And if the answer is yes, then I just let the rest go.
Yeah, well said. The next question, I've heard you guys talk a lot about self-compassion. What are some ways you can be gentler on yourself during this recovery process, especially when those old habits creep back in? Um, I think that again, some of us have been conditioned to beat ourselves up and
Yeah.
to get results from negative reinforcement instead of positive reinforcement. And that could be from, you know, the family of origin, that could be from childhood
Mhm.
experiences, it could be from, mental health crisis that you have, it could be from, swallowing the messages that are given to you by big media, big pharma, big food. It could be a combination of those things. So again, if it goes back to if we're waiting for something or someone outside of ourselves to give us the permission to love ourselves, we're going to be waiting for a long time.
Mhm.
There's nobody outside of us that's going to give us permission or compassion. It has to come from within.
Mhm. Don't you think that can also be a habit, beating yourself up? It's just a habit like anything else.
Mhm. Yes, and again, we're the only ones that can really break that habit. Nobody, we might be lucky enough to surround ourselves or be surrounded by people who have a different perspective on those kinds of habits.
Hmm.
Uh, and those are gifts from the universe, those people. And I definitely have found people like that currently and in the past, and I'm always deeply grateful for them. But I've found until you start giving yourself compassion and speaking with love to yourself, you're not going to be put into a situation or a environment where you can find more people like that.
Hmm. Yeah, agree. Last one. How can I cultivate body acceptance if I don't love every part of myself all the time? So let's get real. This can happen. Not everybody loves all the different parts of their body, their nose, ears, elbows, etc. But again, it goes back to what is the function of that body part, and is that body part doing its job that it was designed to do? Or are you dissatisfied because of some social media image of what perfection looks like. I think this is when the loving adult part of us comes in and has a heart to heart, and we look a little deeper about where is this dissatisfaction coming from, and if it's reasonable, actually. Is that part something you can work on to change? If so, what's the reasonable next step? And if it's the shape of your elbow, then we need to refocus on acceptance and appreciation that it gives us the ability to hug another person. So there's
Mhm.
reframing in there as well that goes along. So just depends on your perspective, but yeah, it's very normal to not love every shape of everything. I heard someone the other day talk about, yeah, I've already had 3 nose jobs. So they obviously were not satisfied. And if you can smell and blow your nose and all the other things, then
Exactly.
you need to re-look at the nose that you have. But anything else that you would like to add before we finish, Jamie?
No, again, it's being present and focusing on what you do have instead of what you don't. It's
Yep.
it's it's scarcity, or it's abundance versus scarcity.
Yep.
It,
Agreed completely. And if
absolutely.
you want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U. And we hope to see you there. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care.